It had been 250 years since the Exodus Ark left Earth. Generations had lived and died within its spinning rings, never knowing soil beneath their feet or the taste of rain on their lips. Children were born under the pale glow of artificial suns, raised in corridors that hummed with the endless rhythm of machines. Their first steps were on steel, not soil. Their first breaths were of air that had been exhaled by countless others before them, cleaned and reborn by filters and algae walls. To them, space was not a frontier. It was the only world they had ever known. For most, Earth was a story, a painting in the digital archive, a memory of a place their ancestors once walked, but they never would. Now, only 1 month remained. 1 month until the Ark would make orbit around Kepler 452c, the promise of land, of oceans, of a sky untouched by human hands. Excitement pulsed through the ship like a current, but so did unease. Whispers in corridors, heated debates in mess halls, long stares into the void, for even as the new world drew near, hope alone could not bind the Ark's people. Not all within its rings were united. Some clung to order, some whispered rebellion, and some guarded secrets older than the voyage itself. The council chamber was cloaked in half-light, the air heavy with anticipation. A massive circular table dominated the room, its surface polished to a mirror's sheen. Above it, Kepler 452c hung in holographic form, a pale blue globe turning slowly, its oceans glinting, its continents cast in unfamiliar shapes. The light bled across the chamber, painting the faces of the council in ghostly hues. Commander Alara Vey stood at the head of the table. Her posture was rigid, her hands clasped behind her back. When she spoke, her voice was low, deliberate, the voice of someone accustomed to command, but also to the weight of consequences. "In 30 days, she said, the Ark begins its final maneuver. Each ring will separate. Each will descend to the surface. Each will stand on its own. This is no longer theory. This is happening." The words hung in the air like a sentence passed. Some shifted forward eagerly, eyes alight with anticipation. Others sat back, their expressions shadowed, as though hearing exile declared. Selene Kaith rose slowly, datapad in trembling hands. Her eyes were hollowed by sleepless nights, her voice thin but edged with urgency. Scans show fluctuations in the planet's magnetosphere. Small at first, but worsening. If the pattern holds, our descent window shrinks. One miscalculation, one storm at the wrong moment, and an entire ring could scatter before reaching the ground. A rustle swept the room. Chairs shifted. Whispers rose. One counselor's hand clenched around a cup until it cracked, spilling liquid across polished steel. Dr. Ryan Solis leaned forward abruptly, palms flat against the table. His eyes burned with a zeal that made some avert their gaze. "Then we must be faster. The genome vault cannot wait. Seeds, microbes, embryos, every hour we delay, viability slips. Without biodiversity, Kepler is nothing but stone and water. With it, we restore Earth's memory. We rebuild what was lost." Across from him, Captain Jalen Merrick sat upright, arms crossed over his chest like drawn steel. His voice cut through the chamber. "Seeds mean nothing if their keepers starve. Shelters, food, defense. If we cannot protect the living, there will be no future to plant those seeds in." The two men's eyes locked across the table. The silence between them was sharper than any blade. Murmurs swelled. One counselor muttered about rationing coolant for orbital shielding. Another hissed about allocating soldiers to protect the vault. The room buzzed like a hive ready to fracture. Alara slammed her palm against the table. The sound cracked like a gunshot. Silence fell at once. Her eyes swept the chamber, hard as flint. "We will not survive on survival alone, and we will not thrive on seeds without protection. We will do both." Her voice rose, steel in every syllable. "Because if we fracture before we ever touch soil, we will have already failed." No one moved. The holographic planet turned on, indifferent to human argument. Faces flickered between conviction, fear, and doubt. Behind Alara's steady words, a shadow of unease lingered. She knew what few dared to say aloud. The Ark was already fracturing long before its rings tore apart. Far below, the hydroponic domes glowed with softer light. They were the Ark's lungs, its stomach, its garden. Artificial suns blazed overhead, bathing rows of grain in gold. Spiral towers of spinach climbed toward the ceiling. Tomatoes glowed red under banks of LEDs, their scent rich and sweet in the recycled air. Tilapia swam silently in glass tanks, their waste feeding the roots of plants, that in turn fed them. Here, the Ark breathed. Darius Holt, the ship's elder farmer, walked among the rows. His back was bent, his hands gnarled from years of tending, but his step was steady. The apprentices followed close, their eyes wide as he spoke. "Respect the roots," he told them, his voice slow, carrying the rhythm of old truths. "And they will respect you." He stopped to kneel, pressing his fingers gently into the moist substrate. "The soil is not soil. Not yet. But one day, Kepler's earth will hold this same weight in your hands." Amara Vey stood among the students, restless, her dark eyes sharp with youth. She broke the silence. "What if the planet rejects us?" she asked. "What if it will not listen?" Her words startled the group. Some apprentices laughed nervously. One muttered she was too young to understand. But Darius only smiled, lines deepening around his eyes. "Soil has listened to life for billions of years. It will listen again. The question, child, is whether we will." Before Amara could answer, a piercing alarm cut through the dome. Red lights flashed overhead. One of the irrigation pumps had failed. A torrent of water gushed across the floor, drenching roots, toppling towers. The apprentices panicked, scrambling to shut down valves. Crops bent and collapsed, roots torn from their trays. Amara stumbled in the flood, her boots slipping on wet metal. Darius barked orders with the sharpness of a commander, his old voice carrying surprising force. "Cut the flow! Shut it down! Now!" But before the team could contain it, one of the apprentices fell hard, striking his head against the steel floor. Blood mingled with the spray. Nira Voss, summoned from the medbay, rushed into the chaos. She knelt beside the boy, her hands steady even as water soaked her sleeves. She pressed a stabilizer to his head, stopping the bleeding. "Get me a stretcher," she ordered. When at last the pump was silenced and the flood drained, silence fell again. Crops lay in ruin, rows shattered. The apprentices stood soaked and shaken. Amara stood among them, her earlier words echoing like prophecy. "What if the planet rejects us?" The classroom hummed with the glow of holoscreens. 1,000 shifting colors painted the curved walls as Earth's history unfolded in curated fragments. Forests stretched endlessly across continents. Mountains rose like giants, their peaks brushed with snow. Oceans surged in endless blue, alive with whales and coral reefs. The children leaned forward, eyes wide, as though seeing a fairy tale. Then the story turned. Forests blackened. Cities sank beneath rising seas. Smoke veiled the skies. The soft narration that accompanied the hollow smoothed over the devastation, speaking of change, of transition, of adaptation. The children sat in silence. Leora Dane stood at the center of the ring. Her voice was calm, careful, like a sculptor trimming edges from fragile stone. And so the Exodus Ark carried 2,000 souls from their failing world, not as exiles, but as pioneers. Remember this, humanity left Earth not because of what we destroyed, but because of what we could build anew. A boy raised his hand. His voice was high, tremulous, but clear. "My grandfather said Earth died because we burned the sky. He said the air was poisoned and the seas rose because of machines. Is that true?" The room fell still. The hollows continued their silent loop. Forests to deserts, oceans to storms, cities fading into ruin, until the boy's words seemed louder than the story itself. Leora hesitated. She glanced at the Ark's insignia etched into the wall, its steel gleaming in the light. A reminder. A warning. Before she could speak, another child whispered, "My aunt said the old world killed itself. She said people fought wars over fire and oil." A ripple of murmurs spread through the circle. Heads turned. Small hands clutched at holoscreens. Voices rose in a scatter of questions. Is it true? Did we kill Earth? Why won't the stories say? Leora raised her hands for silence, but her voice faltered when she tried to answer. Her heart pounded in her chest. She could almost feel the weight of the council's unseen eyes pressing down on her. At the back of the room, historian Soren Vale stood with arms folded, a faint glow from his recorder hidden beneath his sleeve. His gaze was sharp, piercing, drinking in every word, every hesitation. The children's unrest was fuel, and he knew it. At last, Leora forced a smile that did not reach her eyes. Her words came strained, brittle. What matters is not the past. What matters is what we do now. On Kepler, we will not repeat mistakes. We will build better. We will begin again. But the whispers did not cease. Some children lowered their eyes, cowed by her authority. Others kept staring at the images of drowned cities, suspicion etched across their young faces. Soren's jaw clenched. He had lived long enough to know the danger of silence. Each child's doubt was a spark. And sparks, he thought, were how fires began. The medical bay glowed sterile and white, its walls gleaming under the relentless glare of overhead strips. The air smelled faintly of antiseptic and metal, sharp, clean, but suffocating in its perfection. Rows of patients lay beneath diagnostic arches, their vitals traced in shifting light above their bodies. Heartbeats pulsed in soft blue lines. Neural rhythms flickered in green, but the patterns were not steady. They wavered, trembled, broke into irregular spikes that set Naira Voss's teeth on edge. She moved quickly, her eyes darting from display to display. Sleeplessness, tremors, collapses in corridors, anxiety spreading like contagion. The closer they drew to Kepler, the worse it became. A sudden alarm cut the air. One of the monitors flashed red. Naira rushed to the bed of a worker from the hydroponics dome. His chest rose in shallow gasps. His pulse stuttered in broken rhythm. She pressed a stabilizer against his skin. A sharp hiss, a flicker of light, and the device deployed. The man jerked, then fell still. Slowly, his vitals climbed, each rise like a reluctant step back from the brink. "Another case," Naira said, her voice low but hard. She didn't look at her assistant. "Mark it." The assistant hesitated. "That's the fourth today." Naira's jaw tightened. She didn't answer. Later, she stood before Commander Alara in her quarters. The shift from the med bay to this room was jarring, from the constant alarms and hushed cries of the sick to a chamber of silence. Kepler turned slowly on a wall display, its glow the only light. Naira's voice was urgent, edged with fatigue. "This is not fear. I've seen fear. This is something deeper, something in our systems, or in our people. If we don't act, it will break us before descent." Alara's gaze was steady, her hands folded neatly behind her back. She looked like carved stone, a woman honed by decades of carrying the Ark's weight. "Fear is expected," she said at last. Her tone was cool, controlled, her words chosen like blades. But fear must not dictate descent. Naira studied her commander's face, calm, unflinching, and yet behind her eyes a flicker, a shadow, a doubt quickly buried, but not gone. The silence stretched, heavy as gravity. Naira understood what was unspoken. The Ark could endure failing engines, broken systems, even storms on Kepler. But if its people broke before they touched soil, no technology would save them. The storage bay was cloaked in shadow, lit only by the flicker of failing maintenance lamps. Pipes hissed softly overhead, and the floor beneath Kalen Aras was slick with a thin sheen of condensation. The air smelled of oil, of rust, of machines too old to be flawless, but too vital to fail. Kalen sat hunched on a metal crate, his elbows on his knees, his hands blackened with coolant. Fatigue etched deep lines into his face, and his eyes, rimmed red from long shifts at the reactor core, darted toward the door with every groan of the Ark's steel frame. Across from him, Soren Vale stepped from the shadows. He moved slowly, deliberately, as though every sound might betray them. In his hand, he carried a data chip, small, scratched, its casing worn from decades of hidden use. Yet when it caught the light, it glowed faintly in the dim bay, like a forbidden flame. Kalen's breath caught. He hesitated before reaching out. His fingers stopped inches from the chip, as though it might burn him. "The council erased this?" he whispered. His voice cracked, equal parts disbelief and dread. "All of it?" Soren's reply was quiet, steady, but heavy as stone. "They erased everything that might remind us of what humanity truly is. Wars, greed, collapse. They wanted us to forget. They wanted us clean. But a people without scars believe themselves innocent. And innocence," he leaned closer, his eyes hard, "innocence will not survive long on a new world." The words hung in the stale air. Kalen's chest tightened. He stared at the chip, his pulse quickening. In that fragment of glass and circuitry lay truths buried for centuries. To see it was dangerous. To speak it aloud could fracture everything. His hand trembled as he finally took the chip. The glow reflected in his eyes. And for the first time in his life, Kalen felt the weight of history pressing down. The ghosts of Earth, the sins of his ancestors, whispering warnings across 2.5 centuries. Truth was dangerous, but so was ignorance. And in the dim light of the storage bay, Kalen realized the Ark was carrying not just life across the void, but lies. The observation deck stretched wide, glass spanning floor to ceiling. Stars spilled into the void. Against them, Kepler 452c hung vast and luminous, oceans gleaming, clouds curling like painted smoke. Amara pressed her hands to the glass. Her breath fogged the surface. Her eyes shone with awe, and something sharper. Hunger. A boy her age stepped beside her. His voice was hushed, fearful. "My father says Kepler will kill us before we kill it." Amara's voice was steady, though her certainty wavered. "It has to be better. It has to." They stood in silence, staring at the planet that grew larger with every passing day. Above its atmosphere, faint auroras flickered, green and red veils twisting unnaturally, a warning written across the sky. Hope burns brightest on the eve of dawn, but beneath the glow of promise, division stirred, and when the rings separated, unity itself would be tested in ways no one aboard could imagine.
If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe to our channel for more in this series and many other stories we know you'll love. Don't forget to click the notification bell so you never miss an update.